Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some seriously mind-bending stuff?
Always.
Okay, great. Because today we're tackling the Universal Axiom,
Yeah.
a framework that's, well, it's making waves in, like, everything from AI to philosophy.
I've been hearing more and more about this lately, yeah.
It's all about understanding intelligence in a whole new light. And not just, the kind we humans have, but maybe even as, like, a universal force.
Like gravity.
Yeah,
Oh,
like gravity or electromagnetism.
that's a pretty big idea.
It is. And we've got some seriously fascinating sources for this deep dive. We're talking mathematical theories, explorations of consciousness, even some cutting-edge AI developments.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
We do. It's almost like this axiom is a key
Oh.
that unlocks connections between things you'd never think were related.
Now that's what I call intriguing. What I find really fascinating is how the universal axiom isn't just some abstract theory.
Right.
It has the potential to solve real-world problems.
Give me an example.
Like the infamous Cat's conjecture in mathematics.
Oh, yeah, the Cass conjecture. That's the one where, like, you take any number.
Any number at all.
Right. And then you divide it by 2 if it's even, multiply it by 3 and add 1 if it's odd.
Right, and then you repeat that process.
Exactly. And you supposedly always end up at 1.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is. But no one's been able to prove exactly why that happens.
That's the kicker, isn't it?
It is. And now some sources are suggesting that the universal axiom might actually provide that missing piece of the puzzle
Oh, wow.
by showing how this seemingly simple pattern reflects deeper principles of intelligence at play.
Okay, I'm hooked. So we've got intelligence as a force, a possible solution to a math mystery that's stumped experts for years.
I know.
Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, maybe the best place to start is with how the universal axiom challenges our traditional view of intelligence.
Okay.
It argues that we're often looking at it in a very limited way.
Limited how?
Like, we're examining like a 2D shadow of a 3D object. We're just missing the full picture.
I see. So it's like trying to understand a complex machine by only looking at its blueprint.
That's a great way to put it. You might get a basic idea,
Yeah.
but you're missing how all the parts actually interact to create something greater than the sum of its parts.
Precisely. And the universal axiom aims to illuminate that something greater, the underlying principles that drive intelligence in all its forms.
I like that. So what kind of principles are we talking about?
Well, one example that comes up in our sources is the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, yeah, the Fibonacci sequence. You know, those beautiful spiral patterns we see everywhere in nature?
Exactly. From seashells and galaxies to sunflowers, they're everywhere.
They are. But what does that have to do with intelligence?
That's where the universal axiom gets really interesting. It suggests that those recurring patterns aren't just random occurrences. They point to a deeper organizational principle, almost like a universal language of growth and efficiency that governs how complex systems develop.
Wow. And it's not just nature.
Nope, not at all. The axiom argues that intelligence itself, whether in our brains or in AI, follows these same fundamental principles.
Okay. So we're talking about a framework that connects math, nature, and intelligence.
Got it.
That's pretty mind-blowing. But how does all this change the way we think about something like artificial intelligence?
Well, the universal axiom pushes us beyond traditional AI,
Okay.
like the kind we see with, GPT.
Right.
Instead of seeing intelligence as something static, programmed into a machine, it views it as a dynamic, evolving ecosystem.
Okay. So less like a calculator
Yeah.
and more like, what? A living organism.
That's a fantastic analogy. Think of it like our circulatory system.
Yeah.
Information needs to flow constantly.
Just like blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Allowing for growth and adaptation.
I see, I see.
And the axiom actually introduces a concept called the subjectivity scale.
Okay. The subjectivity scale.
Yes. It's like the network of blood vessels allowing intelligence to circulate and evolve.
So if traditional AI is like a static blueprint, the universal axiom's view of intelligence is like the actual living, breathing organism.
Exactly.
That's a pretty profound shift in perspective.
It is.
But how do we ensure that this living AI doesn't go haywire? I mean, we've all seen those sci-fi movies where the robots take over.
That's where another key concept comes in. Self-correction.
Ah,
Just like our immune system is constantly scanning for and neutralizing threats,
right.
the universal axiom emphasizes designing AI that can detect misalignments and make adjustments.
I see.
This ensures not only its effectiveness, but also its ethical behavior.
So it's about creating AI that's not only smart, but also capable of learning, adapting, and staying aligned with our values.
That's the goal. The axiom actually refers to this ethical aspect as the y-axis of intelligence.
The y-axis. Okay, we'll definitely need to unpack that y-axis and the subjectivity scale a bit more later.
Abs-
But first, there's another concept from our sources that's been sending shivers down my spine.
Oh, what's that?
The observer effect.
Yes, the observer effect. This is where things get truly mind-bending, you see, in quantum physics.
Yeah?
There's this idea that the act of observing something
Right.
can actually influence the thing being observed.
Whoa.
And the universal axiom doesn't shy away from this concept.
It doesn't.
No. In fact, it embraces the potential power of consciousness.
Hold on. Are we saying that our thoughts and intentions can actually shape reality?
The axiom suggests that consciousness might play a far more active role than we traditionally believe.
Really?
Yes. It challenges the idea that we're just passive observers of the world
Uh-huh.
and proposes that we might actually be influencing it on a fundamental level.
Okay, I need a minute to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah.
So we're talking about intelligence as a force.
Yes.
A possible solution to an unsolved math problem.
Yes.
And now the idea that our consciousness might actually be shaping reality.
It's a lot to take in, I know. But that's what makes the universal axiom so exciting. It pushes us to rethink our place in the universe and the very nature of reality itself.
This is incredible. But let's take a breather for a moment. When we come back, I want to explore how the universal axiom could revolutionize things like education and healthcare. It sounds like we're on the verge of some major paradigm shift.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to process.
So, where do we go from here?
Well, I think it might be helpful to ground ourselves a bit by
Yeah,
looking at some practical applications of the universal axiom.
that's a great idea.
You know, before the break, we were talking about some pretty heady stuff.
Yeah, we were.
Intelligence as a force,
Yeah.
the observer effect,
No.
the potential for consciousness to shape reality.
It was a lot.
So maybe now we could shift gears a little
Yeah, totally.
and explore how these ideas could actually impact our lives.
Okay, I like that.
Where should we start?
Well, I think education would be a good place to begin.
Education.
It is, it's the foundation for everything.
It is.
It's how we learn about the world, develop our skills,
Right.
and ultimately shape our future.
Absolutely.
But honestly, thinking back on my own education, I remember a lot of rote memorization,
Oh, yeah.
standardized tests. Did I really understand the concepts deeply?
Good question.
Not always.
You've hit upon a key point.
Oh.
The universal axiom, it challenges that traditional model of education.
The one with all the memorization and tests.
Exactly. It suggests that we need to shift from simply absorbing information
Yeah.
to actively engaging with it,
Engaging with it.
experimenting, making connections, and ultimately creating our own understanding.
So instead of classrooms feeling like lectures, they should feel more like labs or workshops.
Precisely. Imagine a learning environment where students are encouraged to ask questions,
Oh, yeah.
test out their ideas, even make mistakes.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more engaging than the classrooms I remember.
And it aligns with the axiom's emphasis on subjective experience and personal growth.
It does. It does.
The universal axiom, you see, it recognizes that everyone learns differently
Yeah.
and that finding your own path to understanding is crucial.
So it's not about fitting everyone into the same mold.
No, not at all.
It's about providing the tools and the environment
Yeah.
for each individual to blossom.
That's a great way to put it.
But it's not just about individual learning, is it?
No, it's not.
We were talking earlier about the importance of ethics,
Right.
that y-axis. How does that factor into education?
That's a vital consideration.
It is.
The universal axiom reminds us that intelligence should always be guided by a strong ethical compass.
I see.
It's not enough to simply teach students how to think.
Right.
We also need to teach them how to think responsibly,
Responsibly.
consider the consequences of their actions,
Yeah.
and to act with empathy and compassion.
So it's about instilling values like integrity,
Yes.
social responsibility, and a sense of interconnectedness with the world around them.
Exactly. It's about fostering a generation of critical thinkers who are not only intellectually capable, but also ethically aware
Aware.
and committed to using their knowledge for the betterment of themselves and the world around them.
I like that.
It's a big goal, but I think it's an important one.
It is. It is.
So education is one area where the universal axiom could have a profound impact.
Okay, that makes sense.
But what about another area like healthcare?
Ooh, healthcare.
Yeah,
That's a big one.
it is.
And it's ripe for transformation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
So how would the universal axiom approach something as complex as healthcare?
Well, it challenges that traditional symptom-focused approach
Okay.
and encourages us to consider a more holistic view of well-being,
Uh-huh.
meaning we're not just looking at the physical body, we're looking at the whole person, mind, body, and even their ethical framework.
So it's about more than just treating the physical body.
It-
We're looking at the whole person.
Yes.
Their mind, body, and even their ethical framework.
Precisely. The axiom suggests that true health encompasses all of those dimensions
All of them.
and that they're all interconnected.
And you're connected, yeah.
You can't separate physical health from mental and emotional well-being.
No, you can't.
And just as importantly, our sense of purpose, our values, our connection to something larger than ourselves, they all play a vital role in our overall health,
That makes a lot of sense.
doesn't it?
I mean, if you're constantly stressed or feeling a lack of purpose, it's bound to impact your physical health as well.
Absolutely. The axiom encourages us to consider factors like lifestyle, environment, social connections, even our sense of purpose as crucial elements of well-being.
It's a much broader approach than what we often see in traditional healthcare.
It is.
And it seems to tie in nicely with some of the exciting developments happening in healthcare today,
Like what?
like personalized medicine.
Personalized medicine, yeah.
Yeah, with its focus on tailoring treatments to an individual's unique needs and genetic makeup.
That aligns perfectly with the axiom's emphasis on understanding the individual within the context of the whole system.
So it's about moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach
Yes,
and recognizing that what works for one person might not work for another.
precisely. And this is where the subjectivity scale, which we mentioned earlier, could play a crucial role.
Oh, right, the subjectivity scale.
The network that allows intelligence to flow and adapt.
Yeah,
But how could it be applied to something like personalized healthcare?
that's a good question.
Well, imagine a healthcare system that doesn't just look at your symptoms or your genetic profile,
Right.
but also takes into account your lifestyle,
Yeah,
your values, your emotional state, even your social connections.
that's a lot of information.
It is.
But I guess the subjectivity scale could help personalize treatment plans
It could?
that address not just the physical ailment, but
Yeah.
the whole person within their unique context.
Exactly. It's about seeing the individual as part of a larger system
It is, yeah.
and understanding how all of those pieces fit together.
That's fascinating, but it also sounds incredibly complex.
It is complex.
How could we even begin to gather and analyze all of that information?
That's where advances in AI and data analysis could play a role.
Oh.
Remember, the universal axiom sees intelligence as a dynamic, evolving ecosystem.
Right.
With the right tools and ethical guidelines, we could potentially develop AI systems that help us understand
Understand.
the complex interplay of factors that contribute to an individual's well-being.
Wow.
So the subjectivity scale is not just a theoretical concept.
Right.
It could potentially be used to guide the development of personalized healthcare solutions.
That's amazing. But it also brings us back to that ethical dimension.
The y-axis.
The I-axis, yeah.
How do we ensure that this technology is used responsibly
Responsibly.
and doesn't create more problems than it solves?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. And it's one that the universal axiom forces us to confront
To confront.
as we develop increasingly powerful tools and technologies.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important than ever to ensure that they're aligned with our value
Our values. Right?
and used for the benefit of all.
That's where the Y-axis comes in.
Exactly. The ethical dimension of intelligence is crucial.
It sounds like the universal axiom isn't just about extending our understanding of intelligence.
No, it's not.
It's also about challenging us to use that understanding wisely and responsibly.
That's a great way to put it.
To use it wisely and responsibly.
It's not enough to simply create intelligent systems.
No.
We need to ensure that they're guided by ethical principles
I agree.
and used to create a better future for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about education, healthcare, but there's one part of the universal axiom that I'm still struggling to wrap my head around.
Oh, which part is that?
The whole idea of consciousness as a force,
Okay.
potentially even shaping reality.
The observer effect.
Yeah, the observer effect. Is there any way to actually observe that in action?
Well, one of your sources mentions a really interesting tool called the Universal Axiom Observer Explorer.
The Observer Explorer. What is that?
It's actually software,
Software.
but it does have a kind of, gadgety appeal.
Gadgety. Huh.
Think of it as a virtual sandbox for experimenting with the principles of the Universal Axiom.
Wait, so I can actually play with this axiom,
You could do
tweak the variables and see what happens.
exactly. You can adjust things like the growth level, the subjectivity scale, even the parameters of what the axiom refers to as the time sphere.
The time sphere.
It's a way to explore these complex ideas in a more interactive and intuitive way.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
It's one thing to read about these concepts, but to actually see them in action, that's next level learning.
It is.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Good.
I'm downloading this Observer Explorer as soon as we're done recording. But there's one more area I want to touch on before we move on.
Okay, what's that?
It seems like this axiom could have a big impact on business and economics as well.
Absolutely.
You could?
The Universal Axiom, it challenges a lot of the traditional assumptions that drive business and economics.
Like what?
Well, for example, it reminds us that sustainable success isn't just about maximizing profits.
Right.
It's about creating value for all stakeholders.
Stakeholders.
So we're talking about not just shareholders,
Right.
but also employees, customers, the community, even the environment.
So it's a much broader view of success.
It is.
One that considers the long-term well-being of the entire system.
Exactly.
So it's about moving away from short-term thinking
Yes.
and focusing on creating businesses that are both profitable and ethical.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that true success isn't just about the bottom line.
It's about making a positive impact on the world.
That's it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about education, healthcare, business.
A lot.
It seems like the Universal Axiom really does have the potential to transform the way we think and act in almost every area of life.
I think so.
But there's still one big question looming.
What's that?
We've danced around it a bit, but I think it's time to tackle it head on. Consciousness.
Consciousness.
What does the Universal Axiom really have to say about that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one that continues to fascinate and challenge us.
It really does.
It does.
I mean, we could talk about intelligence.
Yes.
We could even build machines that seem intelligent.
Right.
But the whole subjective experience of being conscious, of what it feels like to be alive
Yeah.
and experience the world.
That's a whole other level.
It is. It is. It's one of the biggest mysteries in science.
It is.
And it's an area where traditional approaches often seem to fall short.
They do.
Totally. We can measure brain waves. We can map neural networks. But none of that really explains what it means to be conscious.
You're right.
So, does the Universal Axiom, with all its fancy principles and scales, offer any real insight into this?
I think it does.
You do?
Yeah.
How so?
Remember that axiomatic subjectivity scale we talked about earlier?
The one that's like our circulatory system.
Exactly. Well, one of the things the axiom suggests is that consciousness isn't an all-or-nothing thing. It's more like a spectrum.
A spectrum.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Isn't
So instead of asking, is it conscious or not,
Yeah.
we should be asking, how conscious is it?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that consciousness might exist in varying degrees.
Varying degrees.
From the simplest forms of awareness to the complex self-reflective consciousness that we humans experience.
That we humans experience, yeah.
So it's not a simple on-off switch.
No.
It's more like a dimmer switch with a wide range of settings.
But could we actually use that subjectivity scale to measure someone's level of consciousness?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky.
Tricky, okay.
The axiom doesn't provide a simple measuring stick for consciousness. Remember, it's a framework for thinking about complex systems, not a set of hard and fast rules.
Okay, so we're not going to have a consciousness meter anytime soon.
Probably not.
But it sounds like the axiom is pushing us to think about consciousness in a more nuanced way.
Exactly. It encourages us to consider all the factors that contribute to a richer, more expansive experience of awareness.
A richer, more expansive experience of awareness.
And it suggests that the more aligned our subjective experiences are with objective reality,
Okay.
the more conscious we might be.
So it's not just about being aware.
No.
It's about being aware of things as they actually are,
Yes,
without letting our own biases and filters cloud our judgment.
precisely. And this is where it gets really interesting, especially when we loop back to that mind-blowing observer effect we were discussing earlier.
Right, the whole quantum physics idea that the act of observing something can actually influence what's being observed.
Exactly. And the axiom doesn't shy away from that.
It embraces it.
It embraces the potential power of consciousness.
Wait, are we saying that our thoughts, our intentions, our very consciousness could be influencing the world around us on a fundamental level?
It's a mind-blowing idea, right?
It is.
And while the axiom doesn't claim to have all the answers,
Right.
it definitely encourages us to consider that possibility.
The possibility that we might be more powerful than we realize.
Exactly.
Wow, that's both incredibly exciting and a little terrifying.
It is.
Because if our consciousness is really that potent,
Uh-huh.
we better be careful how we use it.
We should.
It's like that saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that crucial element of the universal axiom.
And y-axis.
The axis, yes.
Ethical dimension.
It's not enough to just be intelligent.
No.
We also need to be wise,
Guys.
compassionate,
And passionate.
and responsible with our power.
This has been such a wild ride.
It has.
We've covered so much ground. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what the universal axiom has to offer.
It truly is a vast and multifaceted framework.
It is.
And what's exciting is that it's not a finished product,
No.
but a starting point for exploration and discovery.
Exactly. It's
Exactly.
a framework that challenges us to think bigger,
To think bigger.
to connect the dots between seemingly disparate fields, and to consider new possibilities.
And to embrace the mystery and wonder of it all.
The mystery and wonder, yes.
To remember that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
Much larger, yeah.
And that our choices, our thoughts, and our actions really do matter.
Well said, well said.
They do matter.
But before we get too philosophical, there's one more thing I want to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
You mentioned earlier that the universal axiom might shed some light on how intelligence evolves.
I did.
What did you mean by that?
Well, the axiom challenges some of our basic assumptions about time.
About time?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on.
Are we going into time travel territory here?
Not exactly time travel.
Not time travel, okay.
But the axiom proposes that time might not be this linear, straightforward thing we perceive it to be. It suggests that different levels of consciousness might experience time differently.
Whoa, okay.
Whoa, right.
My brain is starting to hurt a little.
I understand.
But are you saying that our perception of time might be limiting our understanding of how intelligence develops?
Exactly. If time isn't as rigid as we think, then our understanding of learning, evolution, even consciousness itself
Yeah.
could be radically different.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
But how does that actually play out in the real world?
That's a great question.
It is.
And one that the axiom doesn't fully answer.
It doesn't.
It's more about opening up new avenues of inquiry,
New avenues, okay.
challenging us to think beyond our current understanding.
Okay, so it's more about expanding our perspective than providing concrete answers.
I think.
But I have to admit, this whole idea of time being more than just a straight line,
Yeah,
it's incredibly intriguing.
it is intriguing.
It really is.
It is.
It highlights how much we still don't know
Right.
about the nature of reality and the full potential of intelligence.
We're just scratching the surface.
We are.
It's an exciting time to be alive.
It is. And this deep dive into the universal axiom has been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've explored everything from AI to the nature of reality to the mysteries of consciousness.
And even touched on the fluidity of time.
We did.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I started this conversation feeling a bit skeptical.
A bit skeptical, yeah.
But I'm walking away with a whole new appreciation for the power of asking big questions and challenging our assumptions.
That's what it's all about.
I'm glad to hear that.
I am too.
Me too. Who knows, maybe one day we'll unlock the secrets of the cat's conjecture,
We might.
understand the true nature of consciousness.
Or even crack the code of time itself.
Wouldn't that be something?
It would.
The possibilities are endless.
They are.
And that's the beauty of frameworks like the universal axiom.
They give us the tools to keep asking questions, keep searching for answers, and keep pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Well said, well said.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the universal axiom.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, Keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
And keep your minds open to the infinite possibilities of the universe.
I'll see you out there. It really makes you think about all those sci-fi movies.
It does.
Where they talk about, like, bending time in alternate dimensions.
Yeah.
Maybe they were onto something after all.
Maybe.
But even with the more fluid understanding of time, it seems like those practical applications we discussed.
Like personalized healthcare and ethical AI.
Exactly.
They're still pretty far off, wouldn't you say?
You bring up a valid point.
I do.
The Universal Axiom.
Yeah.
It's not a magic wand.
Right.
It doesn't instantly solve all our problems or unlock all the secrets of the universe.
Right. So it's not about finding all the answers.
No.
It's more about asking better questions.
Asking better questions, yes.
And approaching these challenges with a broader perspective.
That's a great way to put it.
It is.
The Universal Axiom, it's more like a compass than a roadmap.
A compass.
It points us in a direction.
Okay.
Encourages us to explore.
Yeah.
And helps us navigate the complexities of intelligence, consciousness, and reality.
I like that analogy.
It's a good one.
So even if we don't have all the answers yet,
Yeah.
the Universal Axiom gives us a new set of lenses, right?
It does.
To view the world and approach these challenges.
Precisely. And that in itself is a powerful tool.
It is. It is.
It's about shifting our perspective.
Shifting our perspective.
And opening ourselves up to new possibilities.
Well, this deep dive into the Universal Axiom has been quite the journey.
It has.
We've explored everything from AI
to the nature of reality,
to the mysteries of consciousness,
to the fluidity of time.
I have to admit, I started this conversation feeling a bit skeptical. But now, I'm walking away with a whole new appreciation for the power of asking big questions and challenging our assumptions.
That's what it's all about.
It really is.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Me too.
It's been amazing.
It's been a pleasure.
And for anyone listening out there,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask those big questions.
No.
Challenge the assumption.
Search everything.
Keep your minds open to the infinite possibilities of the universe.
Absolutely.
That's all for this deep dive into the Universal Axiom.
Until next time.
Keep exploring and keep questioning.
For something deeper, something true. Let's transcend the lines that they drew. Find the common threads between me and you. Beyond the filters, beyond the posts. Inside ourselves, we feel what matters most. From the lyrics of Nirvana to the depths of the wall, through the anthems of rebellion, their echoes call. Expressive styles may differ, but the vibe stays the same. We didn't understand then, life's not all fun and games. Behind all the incentives lie the lessons of the past. We start to see the shadows and stains pop culture casts. But in the light of understanding, we find our way, transcending all the labels, dawning a brand new day. Let's transcend the lines that they drew. Find the common threads between me and you. Beyond the filters, beyond the posts. Inside ourselves, we feel what matters most. Let's weave a tapestry of every hue, a world united, old and new. In every face, a glimpse of grace. Together we can find our place. The whispers of old heroes, wisdom beyond years, echoing through us, calling us to face our fears. In the quiet moments, when we're all alone, we feel the pulse of life, the great unknown. So let's walk this path with open eyes, embrace the truth, discard the lies. In the union of our spirits, we find our home. In this this vast world, we're never alone. Let's transcend the lines that they drew. Find the common threads between me and you. Beyond the filters, beyond the posts, inside ourselves we feel what matters most.